In this exercise, we'll look at how layers, blend modes, and adjustment layers can provide flexible ways to correct contrast and color in an image. Here we have an image that displays the characteristic haze, and your goal is to snap the contrast and make the colors more appealing and natural. With a few additions that float above, I think we've improved the appearance of the image significantly. This is the before, and this is the after. Let's try to recreate the effects on the original now. This image needs to have the haze effect lifted, so we'll tackle that first. We'll add a levels adjustment layer to do that. In here, we can rectify the lack of contrast in the shadows. This has improved the contrast some, but it's not enough. A blend mode on the adjustment layer can improve what we've got. Keeping in mind that we can reduce the intensity of the effect by reducing the layer opacity later, we'll see which blend mode produces the effect we like best. Multiply darkens the image and builds density, a great choice for overexposed areas. Screen will produce a bleaching effect, useful for underexposed or darker images. Overlay is great for increasing contrast in both the highlights and shadows, and always provides great impact. Soft light clarifies the contrast, while hard light does it even more so. Color dodge and color burn are not very useful for this purpose because their effect can be extreme even with the opacity turned down. I think we can settle for the overlay mode and lower the intensity if needed. Check and uncheck the eye icon to make sure you're on the right track. The next thing I'd like to work on is to darken the sky to bring out some detail in the clouds that are barely visible currently. I can begin by making a mask using the data in the background layer. By the way, for more extensive coverage of masking, please refer to the chapter on masking techniques later on in the CD. We can use the color range feature to start the mask. I usually set it to sampled colors and set a slightly lower fuzziness or tolerance, and click and shift-click in the area to select the bulk of the tones. You can always increase the fuzziness if that helps. In this case, it selects more than what we need. Now you can clean up the mask using any method. I'll use the lasso tool to make it fit the sky. You hold down the Shift key to add to a selection, and hold down the Option or the Alt key to subtract from a selection. These are indicated by the little plus and minus signs that appear on the lasso tool as you work. There we've got the mask looking more or less what we need it to be. Now I'm ready to add another adjustment layer to address the clouds. This time I'll choose a curves adjustment because it can give us more control over the different tones in the area. I've changed the name of the adjustment layer to keep the edits coherent. In the Curves dialog, there are a couple of things to note. You can view a wider grid, but I prefer the grid that lets you control 10% increments. Option or Alt-click to toggle between them. Next, some people prefer to work on curves using the scale of 0 to 255 levels in the RGB mode. Makes sense, considering that that's how tonal values in each of the RGB channels are computed. However, I prefer to work with viewing percentages. So I like to have the bar running from white to black from the left. To identify some of the darker tones that exist in the sky region, move the cursor out and click and hold. This makes a bouncing ball visible on the curve, indicating the tones that correspond to the spot you clicked or dragged on. To lock down a point on the curve, Command or Control-click on areas of the image. We should be looking for detail that exists and then try to enhance it and generally exploit it to make up for what's not there in the region. To do that, I'll lock the curve down in a few parts to prevent any radical changes that can posterize the selected area. You don't want to overdo it either. If you had built a good mask, the results should be fairly seamless. If this has introduced a slight color cast, you can correct it in the individual channels of the curves adjustment. In the case of a warm, slightly green cast, you can choose to work on the green channel. Again, sample a representative colored area, lock down the curve, and manipulate the color cast. If the changes need to be integrated more seamlessly, you can paint in shades of gray in the mask to indicate areas that are to be partially transparent. Option or Alt-click to view the mask. And this is a good opportunity to clean it up a little bit. As I paint on the mountains in gray, they're partially affected by the darkening curves adjustment. And these are the changes we've made so far to make the effect blend into the image better. And I think we're finished with this project. This was the before, and this is the after.